Thanks, Matt, for having me. And it's really good to be in New York. You guys have a lot of very heavy rain here, and all of us here have gathered here because we care, right? Because we are data scientists, we are entrepreneurs, we're problem solvers at large, and we want to work on problems that are both interesting and hopefully that makes a big impact in society. And at Opendoor, we've built a company around a really hard problem that hopefully is very meaningful and impactful. And that problem is, how do we simplify the way that people buy and sell houses? How do we modernize the real estate experience, and how do we do that with data science? Now, a lot of you guys are looking at me like, what's Ian talking about? Why do we need to modernize the real estate experience? So I'm talking to a lot of New Yorkers here, so step out of your shoes for a moment and pretend that you are a typical homeowner in the country, okay? So let's just pick Phoenix, for example. So you're that homeowner, and your home is worth about $230,000, and it represents the majority of your net worth. Now you have to move. Okay, so maybe you're expecting a family, so you're sizing up. Maybe your kids are moving away and you're sizing down. Maybe you're going through a divorce, maybe a job relocation. Whatever the case might be, you need to unlock the capital that you have in your home. And so if you just start on day zero and you decide, you know what, I gotta do that, well, guess what? It's gonna take you over 3 months. And in that 3-month period, you don't actually know when you get to close, and you don't actually know how much you would close for. On top of that, you're going through open house after open house, you're negotiating, and there's still a 14% chance that a deal might fall through. That is an incredible amount of stress for the largest transaction of your life. And so what we're doing here at Opendoor is we want to simplify that and make it very easy for people to buy and sell. And the way we do that is we'll actually make an offer for a house and buy it from you so that you don't have to endure 3 months of stress and headache. More on that in a sec. So the average home takes over 3 months to sell, and there's a 1 in 7 chance the deal will fall through. And our goal is to enable homeowners to sell instantly and eliminate these 3 months of stress, hassle, risk, and uncertainty. How big is this problem? Well, it turns out it is the largest asset class in the United States. Roughly 2/3 of Americans are homeowners. It's the single biggest thing that we spend money on. Every year, $1.4 trillion of assets change hands, generating $100 billion in fees. This is a massive industry in which consumers aren't really left with that many choices, right? And that's what we're here to do at Opendoor. We want to really create a new option for sellers. And so here's our product. If you're a homeowner in Phoenix, Dallas, or Vegas, our first 3 markets, you can simply log on to our website, opendoor.com, submit your address, fill out a home profile, and within the same day, we'll give you your offer. And here it is. We'll tell you, hey, this is the fair market value for your house, and here's the amount of fees that we're going to charge, and we're being very explicit with that, and you know exactly how much you can take home. And if you click next, we can close in as quickly as 3 days. Right, so what we've done is eliminated 3 months of stress and hassle and just, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? And you can basically move on whenever you want. Okay, so that's the product. Now, in order to deliver on this product premise, we have to solve some really hard problems. Chief of which is, how do we price our most valuable assets? How do we create a pricing index that clarifies the value of these $25 trillion worth of assets? You and I can log on to our bank account and check our balance down to the cent. But when it comes to the biggest thing that we own, suddenly we have no idea what it's worth. So how do we flip that equation a little bit? And so here's a map of Phoenix, Starkend, and here are all the transactions that happened in Phoenix in the last year. And the sizes of each dot is scaled relative to the amount of the transaction. So the name of the game for us is we have to understand and estimate perfectly the sizes of these dots. And so you might ask, hey, Ian, don't people do this already today? Why do you need data science? Well, yes, today, if you're a homeowner, you can get a broker price opinion, you can get an appraisal, and you will pay $300 to $500 for an appraisal, for instance. And that will give you one opinion of value for your house for this moment in time. In order for us to deliver on our product premise of simplicity, certainty, and speed, we need to be valuing all these houses at any given moment in time, right? And not just in this instance, we actually have to estimate backwards in time and actually forecast forwards in time because we actually buy these houses and we have to manage inventory risk, right? So hopefully people here can appreciate that this is on a whole different order of magnitude when it comes to difficulty, and that's where data science comes in. And so what are some of the challenges with data science? And now I want to highlight 3 of them. And as data scientists, a general the program to build predictive models is that we play pretend. We pretend that we are a buyer in this market, and we ask ourselves, what are the things that we think about? And our job as data scientists is to take those intuitions, teach our model those intuitions, and see which one of those generalize, right? Which one of those withstand the backtest. So let me highlight 3 problems that you encounter if you were to ask yourself these questions. So the first one is you want to see the home. Second one is you want to study the neighborhood. And the third one is that we need to look across time. So if I were to tell you, hey, there's a home in Phoenix, it's 2,000 square feet, 4-bed, 2-bath, can you give me a value? I'm like, no, I need to see the home. Okay, so that's the challenge. We need to start by actually being able to turn very visual signals into something that is machine readable that we can show and ask the algorithms to learn from. And so that 4-bed, 2-bath, 2,000 square feet home that was built in 1995 is a home like this. Now suddenly you're getting all these sensory signals, right? Things that are, as they relate to the quality of the home, that matters when it comes to the price of the home. So what are some of these? Some of these features are fairly quantitative, and others are actually quite qualitative. Right? So the quantitative ones, is there a pool in the backyard? What's the type of the flooring? What's the cabinetry? Is it stainless steel appliances? These are actually fairly quantifiable. And then there are other ones that are actually much harder. Do you like the look and feel of this house? What is the curb appeal for this house? Right, so our job in data science is to then turn all these visual signals into something that's very structured. Like how do you quantify curb appeal? That's a pretty difficult challenge. And so practically speaking, what we do is a combination of deep learning. So we have a couple boxes in Amazon that's running Keras and is kind of turning all these photos into structured data, and also a lot of crowdsourcing. I know that deep learning is in vogue these days, and everyone's talking about deep learning. I'm surprised that we don't have a deep learning talk here tonight. But I'm really hoping that 2017, as a side note, is going to be the comeback year for crowdsourcing because we need it. And it's totally underappreciated as a technique. But okay, great. So we can turn these visual signals into structured data. Are we done? Can you now price this home if I tell you that you have these photos? Well, no, because you want to actually study the neighborhood too, right? They say in real estate, location, location, location. Right? So let's take a look at where this home's located. And here's a map of a neighborhood in Phoenix. And in the back of your mind, you're like, well, you know, cookie cutter home in suburbia Phoenix, what is so difficult about pricing? And so suppose, you know, we're trying to price this home that's got the white arrow here, and these other homes are the ones that transacted in the last 12 months, right? And you're like, you know what, I can probably triangulate based on these other homes, what they closed for, what this home in the middle should be priced at. But really, in reality, housing is actually quite heterogeneous. So there are a lot of features here that are quite variable that would impact the relative prices of these houses. Let me point you to a few of these. So on top here, you have a home that actually backs into the 6-lane highway, and that will obviously be inconvenient and noisy. You've got a power line situation over there, so that's probably not a great look in your backyard. Others are tucked in a cul-de-sac, so it's probably a little bit quieter. Some have pools, some have nicer front yards, some have football fields in the back. You can imagine that this problem gets complicated very, very quickly, right? And this is not the traditional big data problem. In the traditional big data problem, you have basically a lot of data, right? So a lot of N. Really, in this problem, we have very wide data. Our join key in our data set is literally this parcel right here, right? And you can create any kind of data or any kind of features that derive from this home, right? And that's the difficulty about this problem. It's a very, very wide data problem. On top of that, there are real sparsity issues in this problem as well. So in any given 12-month period, there aren't actually that many transactions that happen, say, in this neighborhood. So if I were just to take a snapshot and look at a block group and look at the number of transactions that happen, there are only a handful. So what that means is we actually have to use sound inference techniques to understand the distribution of values for any given home, right? And now we're starting to walk in the rarefied territory of modeling, and most people haven't really gone to this phase in terms of thinking about how to value their houses. And this is just for spot price, right? This is just what I think the home should sell for today. And that's just level 1. Level 2 is how do we then actually telescope this both backwards in time and forward in time? So we need to now start thinking about how we can do a little bit of time travel. So here I want to contextualize the challenge here, and I want to share a data viz that shows the last 15 years of transactions in Phoenix. And so here it is. Red means transactions that close below historical average. Blue means transactions that close above historical average. And in the early 2000s, you see a pretty good mix of red and blue, so it's pretty even keeled, until you see the bubble years, when suddenly all the transactions start reaching historical highs as they all flash blue. And you guys are all holding your breath here. And the subprime crisis hits, and then suddenly housing prices start coming down drastically. Until around 2012, when the prices start to recover, and we're now on a more stable long-term trajectory. So my point here is that the same home, that same 1,000 square feet home, depending on when you ask the question what that value is, you have a very different answer if you ask that question in 2004, 2008, 2012, or today. Right? So there is a lot of heterogeneity, not just in space, but also in time, and we have to model for that. And so what are some of the challenges? Modeling here is the same view of that data set now with time compressed in one dimension, and you have the closed prices, and each dot here is a transaction that closed. And so what you'll see here is for any given moment in time, so if you take a time slice here along the, along the line here, you see that there are structural differences in homes that make it close for less or more. Maybe some homes are smaller, some homes are bigger, so you have patterns along this axis. And you have clear patterns along the x-axis as well. You have trends, both secular and seasonal. And there are even really tiny, small little kind of factoids, if you will, of things that you have to work with, which is that people like to close in round numbers. So you see these striations, and it's because people like to close for 200K or 201K, when in fact, that's just totally just human emotions at play. So those are some of the challenges. Another sort of challenge is that we're dealing with sparsity again. So if you just look at the closed prices and you average that for a zip code in a trailing 28-day time frame, you see this really kind of volatile blue curve. And again, we have to think about how to really wrangle with sparsity here. And one last time series problem I'll mention is that not only do we have to think about price, we also have to think about liquidity. Right? It's not just a question about volatility and where the prices would be. You actually have to model what is the market absorption rate and how ready is the market willing to accept a home that we're able to buy and resell. And we have to price that in as part of that risk. And so there are a lot of really, really hard problems that I've pointed to. And as a startup, we have been successful so far, but really, we're not even 3 years old yet. And we have a team of 220 people, 40 in the technical team, and roughly half of them are in data science. So not only do we have to solve the data science problems themselves, but we actually have to solve the meta problem of how do we actually build the team. Right? And so there are a lot of things that we are a little bit different in terms of what we look for in our team and how we execute. And I know I'm kind of running out of time here, but in the Q&A period, I can give you my rants on Venn diagrams, Matt. Maybe we can talk more about that later. But these are some of the things that we look at when we think about recruiting for our team and when we think about running our team effectively. And really, we solve all these hard problems so that we can deliver on our product premise. And the thing that gives me, frankly, the most satisfaction when we build a team, solve these hard problems, is that we get to help our consumers move on to the next stage of their lives, right? So far, we've helped thousands of consumers so far to kind of sell their home, unlock that equity, and move on. And we look forward to doing that for many others. And with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you very much. It's fascinating. Actually, would be very interested if you wanted to comment on that team slide, the Venn diagram, like the type of people that are good for this.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are these Venn diagrams I think people have taken too far. The ones that have I'm a hacker and a computer scientist and a data science or statistics, and then that sweet spot in the middle, I'm a data scientist, right? I think people take that a little too far. I think that's the minimum bar to be a sufficient data scientist. A. B. It totally underplays the importance of software engineering. And C. That's actually just a small part of what it means to be a data scientist. I think it totally neglects things like business acumen, the ability to actually just solve a problem, And what people do is they bound themselves in these boxes like, I'm a data scientist, I will only ship models and APIs. No, like you're a data scientist, your job is to solve a really hard problem, right? And so people box themselves in, and when I talk to especially young data scientists, they're like, but I've got all the skills I need in this Venn diagram. Like, oh my God, it's not about the Venn diagram. You're getting boxed in by the Venn diagram. So that's my quick rant on that.
Very good.
Thanks. So we work with clients who have similar assets on the financial side. Can you comment on when the AVM technology that you have developed, when it gets a bit more commoditized in 3 to 5 years, how will that impact this asset class on the institutional side?
Yeah, I think there's an implicit assumption that the AVMs will become commoditized, right? And I think, and regardless of whether or not people come up with various value opinions, what really matters is that we are able to actually transact, right? I think what really distinguishes Opendoor from the rest of the companies out there is that we actually put our money at work, right? So we stand behind the model, and we do that by actually buying the asset from the seller and then reselling it. So, what really matters is whether or not we are accurate and we can deliver this for the mass audience.
Can you describe the process to resell afterwards and the team that you have involved in that part?
Yeah, so what do we do after we buy all these houses? Do we just hold on to them forever? No. So what's really interesting about Opendoor is once we buy all these houses, it really, this inventory, while it's, obviously we have to manage that risk, it really allows us to think about how do we optimize the buying experience. Because today, I talked a lot about the selling experience, but the buying experience is equally hard, right? So things like accessing the home, finding out the right house for you, and then am I going to get a good home? These are all pain points. So what we have on the resale side, we have a team of both operators, engineers, and data scientists. What are they doing? They're trying to find the recommended, the best homes that fit the buyer. They're building a system like all-day open houses that allow people to text to enter any of our homes anytime they want. We're building programs like trade-in. So in the same way with a car, you can trade in your car, why can't you do that with house, right? So we've built that. On top of that, as you think about making this really big purchase, how do I know that I'm going to get a good home, right? You're really banking on the fact that the inspector will tell you all the things you need to know. So with us, we even have something called a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. So you can actually return the home to us if you don't like it. On top of that, what's really interesting is because we're acquiring, at this point, hundreds of houses a month, what we can do is we have the best inspectors, the best GCs, the best specialists who are servicing the houses, and we can transfer those quality assurance to the sellers, or to the buyers rather. And so we provide them with warranty as well. So we're doing a lot of work to innovate on the buyer side as well.
So how are you hedging your financial risk?
Yeah. Well, I get this question a lot, which is, can you buy some kind of hedging instrument? And really, there are not that many available out there, and they're not liquid enough where they're attractive from to actually transact on. And so what we have to do is actually be very accurate. Now, the offer that a seller gets has 2 numbers in them. One is the fair market value, so this is what we think your home would sell for in the market. And the other one is a fee. And that fee actually flexes depending on the risk of the home. And so what we have to do is actually to price risk very well. And so the subtext on the title slide, which is how do we price the most valuable asset, we actually have to price both in terms of the fair market value, but also have a really good grasp on the risk profile.
Hi, terrific presentation. You have, I'm very interested in the financial risk side as well and the selling side. Do you try various things to optimize what you do? For example, you could potentially rent houses for a while if you think that the price is going to go up in a different season. Do you try to furnish the homes when you sell them to improve the resale value? Most people know that if an empty home doesn't usually command the same price as a furnished one. I'm just curious what you do to kind of test and optimize the selling process for your homes.
We do a lot. And think of us in the reselling side as a very, very sophisticated seller. So we have a lot of inventory, and we'll try all sorts of different things. Should we stage? Should we not? How much attention should we give on the first day of open houses? How often should we refresh our listings? These are all things that we're constantly experimenting with to optimize for the resale.
Do you take into account the floor plans at all? Like coming from New York City where you have bathrooms that are 30 inches wide and like
Yeah.
bedrooms that barely fit a full bed? Do you take the floor plans?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what's really interesting about this data science problem, right? Because there's a multitude of things that could impact the value. And what we have to do is to turn all these things, floor plan included, into structured data. So yeah, we definitely take a look at floor plan. And it's been really interesting. You know, part of the fun is data scientists working with operators, working with folks who do this day in, day out. And well, what are you looking for in a floor plan, right? How do I actually encode that in the model? But yeah, we definitely take a look at that.
Couple more.
So at the end of the day, if I have a house to sell, why should I trust that your price is the right one?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. We get that a lot. Over time, and all of this is public data, right? So the recorder office will record the sale, and in the long run, as we accumulate more and more samples, people will see our track record, right? And so we're playing a repeated game here. We're not trying to play this single game where we're trying to optimize the margin for this one instance. We're trying to develop the reputation of becoming the fair market value, the provider of fair market value. And so the short answer is, that this is all in the public domain, and you can actually check to see that we're accurate.
Hi. One of the first things you said is pretend you're not in New York and you're in Phoenix. We're obviously all from New York, or most of us from New York. There have been certain companies that specialize and done well in New York real estate because there's some very, very specific issues that affect New York real estate. Have you done in New York? And these are problems that also have similar problems in other specific locales. Like New York, for example, proximity to school zones, it's a very complex issue. Proximity to subways, somebody else mentioned bathrooms. Have you done in New York? Have you considered similar problems in other cities?
Yeah, it's a great question. Would we consider New York? Would we consider San Francisco? I think eventually, for sure. I think the thing to appreciate about this industry is that it is really, really big, and there are many, many cities outside of SF and New York, and the average. I mean, it's crazy.
As we all found out recently. Yes.
Too soon? Too soon. Okay. But the average price of a home in the country is $230,000, right? When you list a home anywhere else in the country, you actually close for 3% less than you list for, right? Like, we have actually designed for this case that works for the majority of the country before we enter kind of SF in New York, because if you optimize for SF in New York, you might actually be able to enter the rest of the country.
All right, one last question, and then lady over there.
Thank you. Actually, this subject is really interesting to me because I'm looking to purchase a home in Manhattan or DC in like the most priciest areas as a first-time home buyer. But my quick question is, like, let's say someone utilizes your services and they sell their home to you. What if that seller down the line hears about his neighbor or multiple neighbors selling their comparable home at a much higher price than you offered and provided to them? Do they have recourse or not? I'm just wondering, like, down the line.
It's an interesting question, because what we're trying to do is to provide fair market value. So if over the course of 6, 12 months, if the market appreciated, it's on us to provide the fair market value at that point. And it's kind of like, if you were to sell your home and you have a buyer that buys it for, call it $1 million, and then 3 months from now, suddenly the market appreciated, and your neighbor sold their home for 1.2. Would you get mad? Right? That's the same dynamic at play.
All right, very good. So since we're at the end of the event and people can come and ask you questions directly, we'll keep you to this, but this was terrific. Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.